This is the first. Wait, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. Also, I don't know why I always start these recordings by saying I think it's just because I'm so trying to not do like the stereotypical generic "Hey, what's up?" or like "Hey, y'all," because it's just like, I don't know, I feel weird doing that. But whatever. Yeah, so I don't know why I said first either. This is the I think this is the second to last, like, technically chapter, or really like essay in this collection of essays. This essay is called The Image World, and I think in terms of digestibility, it's been a lot easier for me to parse through than a lot of the other essays or like chapters here, especially like the first couple ones. And I think that's part of why I like it more, just because it's like easier to understand in it. And like, I don't know, I think it's usually a pet peeve of mine when someone's like super word salady and just like, I don't know, just hides behind a lot of just like really like dense shit. Because I'm like, I don't know, I can't tell if you're like bullshitting me or if I'm just like really dumb and I can't understand what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, if I feel like if I were to sum up this chapter, I'm just gonna keep calling it chapter. It's probably this paragraph that's like pretty much right at the end of it. I'm just gonna read it verbatim. A capitalist society requires a culture based on images. It needs to furnish vast amounts of entertainment in order to stimulate buying and anesthetize. I'm sorry, like, I know that I just can't pronounce that word. I'm sorry. Anesthetize the injuries of class, race, and sex. And it needs to gather unlimited amounts of information, the better to exploit natural resources, increase productivity, keep order, make war, give jobs to bureaucrats. The camera's twin capacities to subjectivize reality and to objectify it ideally serve these needs and strengthen them. Cameras define reality in the two ways essential to the workings of an advanced industrial society: as a spectacle for masses, and as an object of surveillance for rulers. The production of images also furnishes a ruling ideology. Social change is replaced by a change in images. The freedom to consume a plurality of images and goods is equated with freedom itself. The narrowing of free political choice to free economic consumption requires the unlimited production and consumption of images. The final reason for the need to photograph everything lies in the very logic of consumption itself. To consume means to burn, to use up, and therefore to need to be replenished. As we make images and consume them, we need still more images, and still more. But images are not a treasure for which the world must be ransacked. They are precisely what is at hand, wherever the eye falls. The possession of a camera can inspire something akin to lust, and like all credible forms of lust, it cannot be satisfied. First, because the possibilities of photography are infinite, and second, because the project is finally self-devouring. The attempts by photographers to bolster up a depleted sense of reality contribute to the depletion. Our oppressive sense of the transience of everything is more acute since cameras give us the means to fix the fleeting moment. We consume images at an ever faster rate and, as Balzac suspected, cameras used up layers of the body. Images consume reality. Cameras are the antidote and the disease, a means of appropriating reality and a means of making it obsolete. So, my interpretation of that, I feel like it's, the main gist of it is pretty much like, hey, like, I mean, it's pretty, I feel like, to me at least, it's pretty clear that Susan Sontag has a very critical, and not necessarily in a positive way, view of photography. She's basically saying, I think, like, hey, like, we're all just kind of like fucking sick in the head right now. Like, we're kind of just like obsessively taking pictures of these things, whether it's for art or or like to just capture a moment in time in your personal life, or whatever it is. It's all a part of, or it all manifests from the same kind of like well of energy that manifests into like, you know, capitalism and consumption. And I think I generally agree. Like, I don't know, you know, for example, like, I agree that, you know, like the sentence, it needs to furnish vast amounts of entertainment in order to stimulate buying. I agree with that part. But when she says, and anesthetize the injuries of class, race, and sex, like, I don't know if I entirely agree with that. I do recognize and agree that there's a lot of circles, particularly in just like the quote-unquote artistic photography scene or community, where like it's like poverty porn basically, right? Like they take lots of pictures of people who like look really dirty or like quote-unquote weird / quote-unquote ugly, you know, and it's like, oh, look at me, I'm really edgy, or like, oh, look at me, I'm seeing beauty in all these different things. But you're also kind of like recognizing that it's like I don't know, it's a very, I do agree that a lot of photography feels very like bourgeois. It's like, oh, it's like a very middle class to like upper class kind of gaze. It's like, oh, like look at this working person, look at this worker, look at this this like construction worker. This is so aesthetic, you know, because like you're so removed from like that kind of labor, that like you're so white collar that this is like, and it's like you're like othering this aspect of society, or like of class, really. And I mean with race, yeah, too, it's like, I mean, it's like, oh, like look at all these, and this is something that I'm still processing, where it's like, oh, like especially like minorities, or like, I mean, I guess in America specifically, like people who are like non-white people, and like, oh, like look at these pictures of these Asian people, like, oh, it's so powerful. They're like, we're being uplifted, and like we're having representation in media. But it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it also it only happens, and also it simultaneously contributes to our absorption into like the consumption model, right? Or like of making us palatable for the masses, or like whatever, right? And it's kind of like homogenizing us, and it's like, I don't know. So I recognize that aspect, but again, yeah, I don't know if I entirely agree that it's completely like, you know, oh my god, I can never pronounce this word. Anesthetize. I don't know if it entirely like sedates it, right? Like, you know, there's like so much crazy shit happening in the world right now, like genocide, global warming, like, I mean, and there's like lots of photos and videos that are being shared, and you know, to some degree, like we are getting desensitized, but it's, or a lot of us are getting desensitized, or maybe we already are, but I don't know, at the same time, like it doesn't make me feel any, like it doesn't, how do I say this, it's not like I recognize, it's not I'm like recognizing any less like atrocity. It's not like just because I might feel more desensitized doesn't mean I see any less bad in it, if that makes sense, you know? Like, I still see this shit, like all the videos and photos being shared on social media, and I'm like, oh fuck, like that's really fucked, you know? And regardless, like even if we, for the sake of argument, like pretend that like every single person on the planet's desensitized, it's like, I think it's still important from a documentation standpoint, especially like when we look back on all this like years from now as a society, and like, especially from a denier standpoint, like to counter that and to show like, hey, like this is what happened, like, and these people took pictures of it, and we can argue all day long whether or not like these photographers were being like pretentious or like they had their egos in their work where they wanted to like take aesthetic or more quote unquote like artsy pictures of like the atrocities happening around the world. It's like I think both things can be true at the same time. I think we can fetishize things, but also at the same time it doesn't take away from what I believe is the inherent importance of just that documentation. And I think that's kind of like where I lie with, I guess, photography like as a whole, like even with like the people who are like fetishizing poverty and like even if we argue, which I think I tend to agree with, the idea that every single photograph has some inherent bias in it, like with the inherent framing and like whatever you're choosing to take pictures of. And even if you're literally walking around and you're just randomly taking photos as much as possible, as randomly as possible, like that's still a bias in of itself. You're still choosing to do that you're still making a conscious decision to do that, as opposed to taking less random pictures, I don't know if I'm making sense at all. I don't really know where I was going with this, but I don't know. I think there's bias everywhere. I don't think it's exclusive to photography. I guess one can make the argument that photography really like amplifies it and kind of like weaponizes that bias, but I don't know. I feel like even without photography, like I feel like we're pretty biased people, like as it like I don't know, like we've had wars and we've had fights and we've had drama as a species for so long, and I feel like so much of that is just arguably fueled by biases, right? And our own internalizations of the world that conflict with other people's internalizations and how we express those internalizations. Alright, I don't think I have anything else to say. I think there's like one more like section after this. It's like a collection of quotes that I think Susan collected, a bunch of different random quotes from like ads and essayists about or like related to photography. And then I'll be done with this with On Photography, collection of essays. I think I'm gonna try and like get into game development maybe after this. We'll see.